In the rain, a millionaire breaks down in tears in the middle of the street, overwhelmed by longing for the son he lost through distance and justice. A street child approaches, hands him a piece of bread, and asks innocently, "Are you crying because you're hungry too?" The question cuts through his pain like a blade and begins a journey that reveals a secret he never imagined. In an attempt to comfort an unknown child, the man discovers the daughter he had always been searching for, right there before his eyes. The rain pelted down on the streets of Munich as Lucas Brand pulled his coat tighter around himself. His footsteps paused on the wet pavement, mingling with the sound of falling raindrops and the hustle and bustle of the big city. As CEO of Brandtech, one of Germany's leading financial technology companies, he was used to solving problems and overcoming crises. But today, on this gloomy November day, he felt more powerless than ever. The words of his lawyer lingered in his mind. "I'm sorry, Mr. Brand, but the judge has confirmed custody. Your ex-wife is allowed to move to Switzerland with your son." It had been a year since he had last seen his little Max, a year full of painful lessons and failed attempts to reestablish contact. Sophia, his ex-wife, had done everything in her power to remove him from their son's life after their turbulent separation. The memory of Max's last birthday, which they had celebrated together, stabbed him in the heart like a knife. The little boy with the bright blue eyes, Lucas's eyes, who had been so proud of the fire truck his father had given him. "Dad, when I grow up, I want to run a company like you," he had said, and Lucas had laughed and hugged him. How naive he had been to believe that nothing could destroy this happiness. A particularly strong gust of wind made him stumble, and suddenly he realized he had been walking in the wrong direction. The most important board meeting of the year was scheduled to begin in 20 minutes, and he was miles away from the company building. The presentation of the new investment round, which would decide the future of Brandtech, was in his briefcase, soaked by the rain, just like he was. Lucas leaned against a lamppost and tried to call a taxi, but his cell phone had no reception. Despair overwhelmed him, and for the first time in years, he let his tears flow freely. The salty drops mixed with the rain on his face as he released all the pent-up pain and frustration of the past year. He didn't notice the little girl until she was standing right in front of him. She looked about 7 years old, wearing a worn red coat and soaked shoes. Her brown hair clung to her narrow face in wet strands, but her amber eyes looked at him with a wisdom far beyond her age. "Sir, are you crying because you're hungry too?" she asked in a quiet but clear voice, holding out her small hand. In it was a piece of bread, slightly softened by the rain but carefully wrapped in a piece of newspaper. Luke stared at the child in disbelief. Here he was, standing in his tailor-made suit and expensive leather shoes, and a girl who obviously lived on the streets was offering him her food. The irony of the situation hit him with full force. "No, little one," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm not crying because I'm hungry. I'm crying because I miss someone very much." The girl nodded understandingly, as if this were the most natural thing in the world. "I miss someone, too. My mom. She disappeared after eating chocolate." Something about the way she spoke, the clarity in her eyes, despite her obvious poverty, touched Lucas deeply. "What's your name?" he asked, wiping the tears from his face. "Amelia," she replied, "but everyone calls me Emmy. I'm Lucas." "Lucas Brand." A smile flitted across Emmy's face. "I know a way you can get through the city faster, Mr. Brand. The main roads are always congested in this weather, but I know some shortcuts." Lucas glanced at his watch. The meeting would start in 15 minutes and he had no other. "Where do you need to go?" Emmy asked. "To the Brandtech building on Promenade Platz." The girl's eyes widened in surprise. "The big glass building. I wanted to go there too. I sometimes look through the windows and imagine what it would be like to work there," she said without waiting for a reply. "Wait!" She grabbed his hand and pulled him into a narrow alley with surprising strength. "Come on, we'll take the secret passage." Lucas followed her through a labyrinth of narrow passageways and hidden passages he didn't even know existed. Emmy moved with the confidence of a cat that knows its territory. "How long have you been living here?" Lucas asked cautiously as they slipped under a low archway. "For a year," Emmy replied matter-of-factly. "When I was born, they put me in a home, but it was horrible there. The caregiver always locked me in the dark closet when I asked for my mom. So I ran away. The casualness with which she told this harrowing story made Lucas's heart heavy. And no one looked for you? Emmy shrugged. Maybe, but I'm good at hiding. They turned into another alley and suddenly the promenade plots opened up in front of them. The imposing glass building of Brandtech towered above them, its facade glistening in the rain. See? Emmy said proudly. We're here and it only took 7 minutes. Lucas looked at his watch and realized they actually still had time. Emmy, you're incredible. Thank you. He hesitated for a moment, then knelt down in front of the girl to be at eye level with her. I have to go to a very important meeting now, but I want to thank you. Would you wait here for me? We could go out to eat together afterwards. A skeptical expression flitted across Emmy's face. You won't forget me. No, I promise. 2 hours, then I'll be back here. He took off his watch and handed it to her. This is my favorite watch. I'll come back to pick it up. Emmy looked at the expensive watch with wide eyes, then nodded seriously. Agreed, Mr. Brand. Lucas entered the building with mixed feelings. The upcoming meeting was crucial for the future of his company, but his thoughts revolved around the strange girl who had just helped him. There was something special in her eyes, something that reminded him of someone, but he couldn't quite place who. In the lobby, he was greeted by his assistant Martina, who was visibly relieved to see him. Mr. Brand, thank goodness. Your mother is already in the conference room with the investors. She's not very pleased about your delay. Lucas sighed. Helga Brand, the founder of Brandtech and his mother, was known for her iron fist and unyielding nature. Although he had taken over as CEO of the company, she still wielded considerable influence as chairwoman of the board and never hesitated to exercise it. Is everything ready for the presentation? He asked as they hurried to the elevator together. Yes, everything is ready, but... Martina lowered her voice. Your mother has made changes to the figures. She says her forecasts are too conservative. Lucas's stomach clenched. He had spent weeks preparing these forecasts, carefully analyzing every variable. What had she changed? The growth rates for the next quarter? She had doubled them. The elevator stopped on the top floor and Lucas felt his headache returning. Such arbitrary interventions by his mother had become more frequent lately. It was as if she didn't trust him to run the company she had founded 30 years ago. He paused in front of the conference room door and took a deep breath. He had to keep a clear head now. Convincing the investors was crucial for the expansion into Asia that he had been planning for months. And after that, he would return to Emmy and keep his promise. With one last deep breath, Lucas opened the door and stepped into the room, ready to face the critical glances of his mother and the investors. But part of his mind remained with the little girl in the red coat who had reached out to him in a moment of despair. As the door closed behind him, he had no idea that this chance encounter would change his life forever for Thailand. The conference room fell silent as Lucas entered. Representatives of Europe's largest investment firms sat around the polished mahogany table. Their gazes were a mixture of curiosity and impatience. At the head of the table sat Helga Brand, an imposing woman in her early 70s, whose steel-gray hair was tied back in a severe bun. Her blue eyes, the same as Lucas's only son, fixed him with barely concealed disapproval. How nice that you were able to make it, Mr. Brand, she said in a cool voice, deliberately choosing the formal form of address in front of the investors. We were just discussing the impressive growth rates that Brandtech will achieve in the next quarter. Lucas nodded to those present and took his seat at the table. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay. Let's continue. The next 90 minutes flew by. Lucas presented the expansion strategy with the precision and passion for which he was known. He talked about the new blockchain technology Brandtech had developed, the markets in Asia they wanted to tap into, and the revolutionary financial products they were planning. In doing so, he tried to gently correct his mother's exaggerated forecasts without directly questioning her authority. The investors seemed impressed, asked intelligent questions, and nodded appreciatively. Even Helga Brand couldn't quite hide her satisfaction, although she pressed her lips together disapprovingly with each of his corrections. When the meeting ended and the investors said goodbye, Lucas sensed that they were on the verge of a significant breakthrough. Dr. Weber, the representative of the largest fund, had confided in him that they were prepared to take over the entire financing round. A complete success, he said to Martina. When the last investor had left the room, Dr. Weber was very impressed. Despite or because of my more realistic figures? Lucas asked, glancing sideways at his mother, who was standing at the window looking down at the rainy city. Helga turned around, her face a mask of serenity. You underestimate our potential, Lucas. You've always been too cautious, but today you did well. It was the closest thing to praise he would get from her, and Lucas accepted it with a nod. However, his thoughts were already wandering to the little girl waiting for him outside. If you'll excuse me, I have an important appointment, he said, reaching for his coat. Helga raised a perfectly plucked eyebrow. An appointment more important than the debriefing with the team? Yes, mother, in this case. Yes. He was already at the door when Martina let out a stifled gasp. Mr. Brand, your watch. You're not wearing it. Lucas smiled. I know, I lent it to someone who helped me a lot today. He left his stunned assistant and his suspicious mother behind and hurried to the elevator. As the doors closed, his features relaxed for the first time that day. He had done it. The meeting had gone well, and now he would fulfill his promise to Emmy. When he arrived in the lobby, he looked around searchingly. The agreed meeting place was empty. Had Emmy changed her mind? Had she run away? He felt an irrational disappointment. Then he heard voices coming from the security area. One of them was high-pitched and defiant. Emmy's voice. Lucas hurried over and saw the girl surrounded by 3 security guards and the receptionist, who were desperately trying to get her to leave. But I'm waiting for Mr. Brand. He gave me his watch. See? Emmy held up the expensive wristwatch, which only made the situation worse. Of course he did, sweetie, said one of the security guards in a condescending tone. And I'm Santa Claus. Now give me the watch and get out of here before we call the police. No, Emmy backed away, clutching the watch tightly to her chest. He promised to come back to me. He promised. Lucas quickened his pace. Emmy, there you are. The group turned to him in surprise. The security guards' faces reflected confusion, while Emmy's features showed pure relief. Mr. Brand. She ran toward him and then stopped, unsure whether to hug him. Lucas knelt down and smiled at her. Did you take good care of my watch? Emmy nodded seriously and held out the precious item to him. Yes, a man wanted to take it from me, but I ran away and hid. You hid in here in the cleaning room. The nice lady there helped me. Amy pointed to a young woman in a cleaning uniform who was standing shyly at the edge of the group. The woman, whose name tag identified her as Kara, shifted nervously from one foot to the other. She looked so scared, Mr. Brand, and she had your watch. I thought there must be a reason. I just wanted to protect her until you came back. Thank you, Clara. You did the right thing. Lucas turned to the security guards, whose faces now fluctuated between embarrassment and confusion. This young lady is my guest. I expect her to be treated with the respect that all my guests deserve in the future. The men muttered apologies and withdrew. The receptionist smiled sheepishly and returned to her seat. Well, Emmy, Lucas said, putting his watch back on, I promised to take you out to dinner, didn't I? Are you hungry? Emmy's eyes lit up. Very hungry. Kara, Lucas said to the cleaning lady, would you like to join us as a thank you for your help? The young woman blushed and shook her head. That's very kind of you, Mr. Brand, but I still have work to do. It can wait, I insist. Clara hesitated, then nodded. Thank you, Mr. Brand. The 3 of them left the building and stepped out into the afternoon, which was beginning to clear up. The rain had eased off and become sporadic. Sunbeams broke through the clouds. Where would you like to go, Emmy? Lucas asked. You can choose. Em thought for a moment, then said with shining eyes, I once looked through a window and saw people eating spaghetti. They looked so happy. Italian it is then, Lucas laughed. I know an excellent restaurant just around the corner. They had barely taken a few steps when a sharp voice rang out behind them. Lucas, what on earth are you doing? Helga Brand stood at the entrance to the building, flanked by Martina and 2 assistants. Her face was a mask of horror and anger. I'm going out to eat, Mother, Lucas replied calmly, with my guests. Helga completely ignored Kara and fixed Emmy with a gaze colder than the November rain. Have you lost your mind with this street kid? What will the investors think when they see you with someone like that? Lucas felt Emmy press herself against him, intimidated by the stern old woman. The investors have left, Mother, and even if they hadn't, what would you think, that I'm a compassionate human being? That I help someone who needs help? Would that be such a terrible thing? Helga's eyes narrowed to slits. You naive boy, you have no idea how the world works. That child has obviously manipulated you. She probably stole your watch and told a sob story to get your sympathy. I didn't steal anything, Emmy cried, her voice choked with tears. I've never stolen anything, not even when I was really hungry. See, Mother, Lucas said bitterly, you don't know her, but you're ready to assume the worst. I know her type, hissed Helger. Werner, Stefan, take this child away from here. Now, the two assistants, large men in dark suits, stepped forward. One of them grabbed Emmy's arm, but Clara stood protectively in front of the girl. No, leave her alone. Ka, please step aside, Helga said in an icy voice. This is a family matter. No, it's not, Clara replied with surprising firmness. It's a matter of humanity, and if you take this child away against her will, I'll call the police. Helga's face contorted with rage. Do you know who you're talking to? I'm Helga Brand, the founder of this company. I can fire you with a snap of my fingers. Then do it, Clara said calmly, but I still won't let you hurt this child. A moment of tense silence followed. Then Helga actually snapped her fingers. You're fired, miss, whatever your name is. Martina, make sure she packs her things and leaves the building immediately. Clara turned pale, but she didn't move from Emmy's side. Lucas stepped next to her, put a hand on her shoulder, and looked his mother straight in the eye. If you fire Kara, Mother, then I'll quit. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Martina gasped softly. The assistants looked at each other uncertainly. Helga stared at her son as if he had hit her. That's ridiculous, she finally said. You wouldn't throw away your career, your inheritance, everything we've worked for a street kid and a cleaning lady, for two people who have shown more decency and courage than you in all the years I've known you. Yes, I would. At that moment, one of the assistants, Werner, stumbled, and the briefcase he was carrying fell to the ground. Its contents, documents, pens, a tablet, scattered across the pavement. Emmy, who was helping to pick things up, suddenly froze. She was holding a photo that had fallen out of one of the documents. Mom, she whispered in disbelief. Lucas and Clara leaned over her to see the picture. It showed a young woman with the same amber eyes as Emmy, standing smiling in front of the Bruntech building. That's my mom, Emmy cried, her voice a mixture of joy and confusion. Where is she? Do you know my mom? Helga turned pale. With a speed that one would not have expected at her age, she rushed forward and snatched the photo from Emmy's hand. Nonsense, that's not your mother, that's a former employee. She's long gone. No, that's my mom. I recognize her. Her name is Lena Fisher. At the mention of the name, Helga flinched as if she had been electrocuted. Her hands trembled as she tore the photo into small pieces and scattered them in the wind. Enough of this nonsense, she shouted. Werner, Stefan, do what I told you. The men stepped forward, but Lucas stood protectively in front of Emmy and Kara. Don't touch her, he said in a voice that brooked no contradiction. Werner, Stefan, you work for Brandtech, and I am the CEO. I say this matter is over. Go back to the office. The men hesitated, their eyes darting back and forth between mother and son. Finally, they nodded to Lucas and stepped back. You'll regret this, Lucas, Helga said, her voice low and dangerous. You have no idea what you're getting yourself into. Maybe not, Lucas replied, but I intend to find out. Helga turned abruptly and stormed back into the building. Martina hurried after her, her face pale with worry. When they were gone, Lucas knelt down in front of Emmy. Emmy, are you sure that was your mother? In the photo? The girl nodded vigorously, tears in her eyes. Yes, it was her. Before she ate the poisoned chocolate and disappeared. Why did the evil woman tear up her picture? Why doesn't she want me to find my mommy? Lucas exchanged a glance with Clara, whose face reflected dismay and confusion. I don't know, Emmy, he said slowly, but I promise you. We'll find out. He stood up and held out his hand to both of them. Come on, let's go eat anyway, and then we'll get to work. As they walked down the street, the distraught girl between them, Lucas couldn't help but wonder what his mother had to hide and why the name Lena Fisher had frightened her so much. The Bella Napoli restaurant was a small, cozy establishment with red tablecloths and flickering candles. The aroma of fresh herbs and tomato sauce filled the room. It was a familiar place for Lucas. He often came here when he wanted a quiet lunch away from the hustle and bustle of the company cafeteria. For Emmy, on the other hand, it was a whole new world. Her eyes widened when she saw the steaming plates being served at the neighboring tables. Her little nose twitched as she took in the different smells. She sat stiffly in her chair, as if afraid of doing something wrong. "You can relax," Lucas said gently. "This is a place to feel comfortable." Kara, who was sitting across from them, smiled encouragingly. "Have you ever eaten in a restaurant before, Amy?" The girl shook her head. "No, but I've sometimes looked through the windows and watched people." Something in that simple statement broke Lucas's heart. A child who spent her life watching from the outside as other people enjoyed the simple pleasures of life. The waiter arrived, a friendly older gentleman who greeted Lucas with a warm "Signor Brand." He looked at Emmy with curious eyes, but said nothing about her obviously worn clothes or matted hair. They ordered spaghetti bolognese for Emmy, as she had requested, risotto for Cara, and ossobuco for Lucas. While they waited for their food, Lucas tried to learn more about Emmy's story without pressuring her. "Amy," he began cautiously, "can you tell me more about your mother?" "About Lena?" The girl playing with her cutlery looked up. "She was the most beautiful mom in the world, and the smartest. She always read me stories and taught me how to plant flowers." She smiled at the memory. "We had a small garden on the balcony of our apartment. Nothing special, but Mom always said a little green makes life more beautiful." "And what happened? You mentioned that she ate chocolate." Amy's face darkened. "It was her birthday. A man brought a box of chocolates. He said they were from an admirer. Mom laughed and said it must be a mistake, but she ate one anyway. Then she started acting strange. She started talking nonsense and couldn't walk properly anymore. I was so scared." Clara put her hand on Emmy's. "That must have been terrible for you." Emmy nodded. "Two men in white coats came and took her away. They said she had to go to the hospital. I wanted to go with her, but they wouldn't let me. They said children weren't allowed. Then other people came, a man and a woman. They said they were from Child Protective Services and would take me to a nice place until Mom was better." "The home you told me about," Lucas muttered. "Yes, but it wasn't nice there. The caregiver, Mrs. Mueller, was mean. She always said my mom wouldn't come back because she had gone crazy. But that's not true. My mom isn't crazy. Of course not," said Lucas reassuringly. "Do you know which hospital she was taken to?" Emmy shook her head. "No," but she hesitated. "One of the men in white coats said something about Lichtental. I'm not sure." Clara sucked in her breath sharply. "The Lichtental Clinic is a psychiatric facility on the outskirts of town." Lucas's mind raced. A woman who suddenly developed psychotic symptoms after eating a praline. A praline that supposedly came from an anonymous admirer, and then his mother's violent reaction to the photo and the name. He asked slowly, "how did your mother earn a living? What was her profession?" "She worked in a large building. She cleaned there. She said that one day she would go back to school and become an important woman." Clara and Lucas exchanged meaningful glances. "Did she ever mention who exactly she worked for?" Clara asked. Before Emmy could answer, the waiter arrived with their meals. The girl's eyes widened at the sight of the steaming spaghetti, and for a moment, all questions were forgotten. She reached for the fork and awkwardly tried to wind the noodles around it, as she had seen others do. Lucas watched her with a smile, then showed her how to turn the fork against the spoon to catch the spaghetti. Amy's face lit up with joy when she succeeded, and her first bite made her close her eyes in delight. "This is the best thing I've ever eaten," she announced with her mouth full. For a while they ate in silence, Emmy with the enthusiasm of a child who had gone too long without enough to eat, Cara pensively, and Lucas deep in thought. The pieces of the puzzle began to fit together in his head, and he didn't like the picture that emerged at all. When Emmy had almost finished her plate, the conversation picked up again. "Emmy," Lucas said, "do you remember what your mother looked like when she ate that chocolate? Did she show any particular symptoms?" The girl frowned, trying to remember. Her face turned red and she said everything was spinning. Then she started saying strange things, that someone was following her, that she was hearing voices. She didn't recognize me anymore. Her voice broke. She looked at me as if I were a stranger. That sounds like a drug reaction, Clara said quietly. Not a mental illness that suddenly breaks out. Lucas nodded grimly. I think the same. Emmy, when exactly did this happen? Can you remember the date? It was Mom's birthday, March 15th last year. And you haven't seen her since? Emmy shook her head sadly. No, I ran away from the home to look for her, but I didn't know where to start. Lucas made a decision. We'll find her, Emmy, I promise you. Clara looked at him in surprise. How are you going to do that? I have contacts and resources. He took out his cell phone and dialed a number. After a short conversation, he hung up and turned back to the two of them. I just spoke to Victor Berger. He's a private investigator I used to work with. He'll help us find Lena. And in the meantime, Clara asked, what will happen to Emmy? She can't go back to the streets. Lucas thought for a moment. She can stay with me. I have enough room. Clara shook her head. With all due respect, Mr. Brand, but you're a single man. The authorities would never allow that, even temporarily. You could stay with me, she suggested instead, turning to Emmy. I have a small apartment, but I have a guest room. It's not much, but... She just lost her job because of me, Lucas interrupted. I can't ask you to do that too. You haven't lost your job, he said firmly. I'm the CEO, and I say you're not fired. On the contrary, I'm offering you a promotion as my personal assistant for special projects. Clara stared at him. But I don't have the qualifications for something like that. I'm a cleaner. You've shown more character and integrity today than most executives I know. That's the only qualification I need. He looked at her seriously. Besides, I'd like to have someone by my side whom I can trust while we figure out what's going on here. Clara hesitated, then nodded. All right, but only if Emmy agrees to stay with me. They both looked at the girl, who was watching them with wide eyes. Would that mean I don't have to sleep on the street anymore? She asked quietly. Yes, exactly. That's what it would mean, Clara said gently. And will we find my mom? We'll do everything in our power, Lucas promised. Emmy thought for a moment, then nodded. Okay, but I want to help. I'm good at finding things. Lucas smiled. I'm sure of that. And we can use all the help we can get. At that moment, his cell phone vibrated. It was a message from Victor. Meet me in an hour, my office. Bring everything you have. We should go, Lucas said, waving to the waiter to pay. Victor wants to see us. By the time they left the restaurant, the rain had completely stopped. The sun broke through the clouds, bathing Munich in golden light. Emmy skipped between Lucas and Kara, her hand clasped tightly in Kara's, her eyes full of hope for the first time in a long time. Lucas watched her and felt a strange connection to this little girl who was so bravely enduring her fate. He couldn't say exactly why he felt so strongly drawn to her, why he was willing to take on his powerful mother to help her. It was as if something deep inside him was whispering that Emmy was important, not only to herself, but also to him. Victor's office was located in an old building in the Glockenbach district, hidden above an antique shop. The stairs creaked as they climbed them, and the smell of old wood and floor polish hung in the air. The detective himself was a gaunt man in his 50s with thinning hair and rimless glasses. His eyes scanned the unusual group entering his office sharply and attentively. Lucas, he greeted his old friend with a handshake, and these must be Kara and Emmy. He knelt down in front of Emmy and held out his hand. Pleased to meet you, young lady. I hear you're looking for your mother. Emmy nodded seriously and shook his hand. Can you find her? I'll do my best, Victor promised, but I'll need your help. You have to tell me everything you know about her. While Emmy and Victor talked, Lucas led Clara to a small sofa at the side of the office. How are you? He asked quietly. This must be overwhelming for you. Clara ran a hand through her brown hair. Honestly, I still can't quite believe it. This morning I was a cleaning lady, and now I'm whatever I am now, involved in something that sounds like a conspiracy. I'm sorry I dragged you into this. You don't have to be. I made my own decision when I protected Emmy. She looked over at the girl who was talking eagerly with Victor. There's something about her. She reminds me of myself when I was her age. Vulnerable but strong. Lucas nodded in understanding. I feel the same way, like I have a connection to her that I can't explain. A knock at Nanti. The door interrupted their conversation. Victor got up to open it, and a young man with a laptop bag entered. "Ah, Max, just in time," Victor said. "This is my assistant," he explained to the others. "He's a genius when it comes to computers." Max nodded shyly and immediately began setting up his laptop. Victor turned back to the group. "So let's summarize what we know. Lena Fisher, presumably a former cleaning lady at Brandtech, received a box of chocolates on her birthday about 18 months ago, allegedly from an admirer. After eating one of these chocolates, she developed symptoms suggestive of drug intoxication. She was picked up by men who claimed to be from the emergency services and possibly taken to the Lichtental clinic. Since then, there has been no trace of her." He turned to Lucas. "And you think your mother might have something to do with this?" Lucas sighed heavily. "I don't want to believe it, but her reaction to Lena's name and photo, it was as if she had seen a ghost. And then her immediate hostility towards Emmy. Yes, I'm afraid she's somehow involved." Victor rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "We need more information. Max, can you hack into Brandtech's personnel database?" Max looked nervously at Lucas. "That would be illegal." "Unless you have my permission," said Lucas. "I'm the CEO. Look for everything about Lena Fisher." Max nodded and began typing. His fingers flew across the keyboard. After a few minutes of intense work, he looked up. "I found her. Lena Fisher, 29 years old, worked as a cleaner at Brandtech from January 2016 to March last year. She was fired for unexcused absences. That must be after she disappeared." "Is there an address?" Victor asked. "Yes, Marienplatz 8, apartment 3C. "That's our apartment," Emmy exclaimed excitedly. "That's where we lived." "Is there anything else?" Lucas pressed. "Any notes in her file? Incidents?" Max scrolled through the data. Nothing unusual. Good reviews, punctual, reliable. "Wait," he frowned. "There's an encrypted attachment here. I need some time to crack it." "Do that," said Victor. "In the meantime, we should check out that Lichtental clinic. If Lena is or was there, we need to find out." "How?" asked Clara. "Psychiatric institutions don't release patient information, especially not to strangers." A mischievous smile flitted across Victor's face. "Let that be my concern. I have my methods." Lucas felt a hand grasp his and looked down. Amy was standing next to him, her eyes full of determination. "Are we going to find my mom today?" she asked. The hope in her voice was heartbreaking. Lucas knelt down to be at eye level with her. "I don't know, Emmy, but we won't stop looking until we find her. I promise you that." At that moment, Max's computer beeped. "I've decrypted the attachment," he announced. His face turned pale as he read the contents. "Oh my God, what is it?" Victor asked as they all crowded around the screen. "It's an email correspondence," Max said in a trembling voice, "between Helga Brand and someone named Dr. Schneider from the Lichtental Clinic. They arranged for a patient to be admitted under a false name. A patient with—" He paused and looked at Emmy, unsure whether to continue. "Say it," Lucas demanded, his voice hard with suppressed anger. "A patient with alleged paranoid schizophrenia who was to be forcibly admitted after expressing warning delusions about her relationship with a member of the Brand family." The silence in the room was oppressive. Lucas stared at the screen, his thoughts a jumble of disbelief and growing horror. His own mother was involved in the forced hospitalization of an innocent woman. It was unimaginable. And yet, deep down, he knew that Helga Brand was capable of such measures if she believed it was necessary to protect the family name and the company. "Is there more?" he asked in a hoarse voice. Max continued scrolling through the documents. Here was a transfer to the clinic, a considerable sum. And here, he hesitated, an instruction to the HR department to remove all records of Lena Fisher and mark her position as terminated for operational reasons. Clara had protectively put her arm around Emmy's shoulders. The girl looked confused, not fully understanding what the adults had discovered, but sensing that it was something serious. "What does all this mean?" she asked in a quiet voice. Victor knelt down in front of Vera. "It means we have a lead on your mom, Emmy. A very good lead." Lucas rubbed his temples. The headache had returned, stronger than before. "But why? Why would my mother do such a thing?" "The email mentions rumors about a relationship with a member of the Brand family," Victor said thoughtfully. "Could it be that Lena actually had a relationship with someone in your family? With your father, perhaps?" Lucas shook his head. My father has been dead for 10 years and I have no siblings. He paused as a thought occurred to him. Unless, Clara pressed. About 8 years ago, I had a relationship with a woman who worked at the company. Nothing serious, I thought. She suddenly disappeared, leaving only a short letter saying that she had found another job and was moving away. He frowned. I can't remember her name. It was so long ago, but she had amber eyes, just like... His gaze wandered to Emmy, who was looking at him with those very eyes. Eyes that suddenly seemed so familiar to him. Eyes he saw in the mirror every morning, only in a different color. Oh my God, he whispered. Clara had followed his train of thought and looked at him with wide eyes. You think Emmy could be Max? Lucas suddenly interrupted urgently. Can you open Lena's personnel file again? I need her date of birth, Max typed hastily. It says March 15th, 1990, and her start date at Brandtech is January 2016. Lucas quickly calculated in his head. That was shortly after she disappeared. She must have come back under a different name. He turned to Emmy. Emmy, do you know when your birthday is? On December Z, she replied. I'll be 8 soon. Lucas calculated again. December 8 years ago. That would mean Lena would have gotten pregnant in March or April, right around the time he had been with this woman. The timing was perfect. I need to know, he said decisively. Victor, we need a DNA test. The detective nodded understandingly. I know someone at the state criminal police office. He can do it discreetly and quickly. What is a DNA test? Emmy asked curiously. Clara gently stroked her hair. It's a test that shows whether people are related. Emmy's eyes widened, just like in the detective shows on TV, where they find out who the father is. Something like that, Kara said with a nervous smile and gave Lucas a meaningful look. Lucas felt his stomach tighten. Was it possible? Could this little girl who had comforted him with a piece of bread this morning actually be his daughter? A daughter he didn't know existed. The thought was so overwhelming that he had to sit down. In the meantime, we should check the Lichtental clinic, said Victor, who noticed Lucas's dismay and changed the subject. If Lena is there, we have to find a way to get her out. How are you going to do that? Lucas asked. If my mother did arrange for her to be admitted, she will have made arrangements. Victor smiled grimly. Like I said, I have my methods. Max, call Dr. Wagner. Tell him we need his help with a delicate matter. While Max was on the phone, Lucas turned to Clara and Emmy. You should go home and get some rest. It's been a long day, especially for you, Emmy. The girl shook her head vigorously. No, I want to be there when you find my mom. Emmy, Clara said gently, it could take a while and it's already late. You need sleep, but I want to help. Lucas knelt down in front of her. You've already helped a lot, Emmy. Without you, we would never have found out what happened to your mother. But now we need you rested and strong for tomorrow. We'll call you as soon as we find out anything new. Emmy looked at him suspiciously. I promise, I swear. He hesitated, then added, and I keep my promises, you know that. That seemed to convince her. She nodded reluctantly. Okay, but you really have to call. We will, Clara promised and stood up. Are you coming, Emmy? I'll show you my apartment. It's not as fancy as this place, but it has a real bed and a hot shower. At the mention of a shower, Emmy's eyes lit up. With soap bubbles, Clara laughed. If you want, we can blow soap bubbles. Lucas watched as the two walked toward the door. Emmy's small hand clasped Clara's tightly. He gave Clara his card with his private number on it. Call me if you need anything. Anything at all. She nodded and squeezed his hand briefly. Good luck tonight, and be careful if your mother is capable of all this. I know, he said grimly. Believe me, I know. After Clara and Emmy left, Lucas and Victor turned their attention back to the case. Max had finished his phone call. Dr. Wagner is expecting us in an hour, Zonde reported. Hersom says he can help us, but we have to be careful. The Lick Dental Clinic has powerful patrons. Patrons like my mother, Lucas muttered, bitterly. Exactly, said Victor. But first we should find out more about these ominous chocolates. If they really were poisoned, as Emmy claims, then we're dealing with a serious crime. Lucas stared out the window at the streets of Munich, now glowing in the light of the setting sun. My mother is capable of many things, but poisoning seems too far even for her. She wouldn't have had to do it herself, Victor pointed out. She has employees, contacts. Werner and Stefan, Lucas said suddenly. The two assistants who were there today seemed to know who Emmy was even before my mother reacted. Victor wrote down the names. We'll check them out. Max, can you find their personnel files? While Max continued his research, Lucas went over everything in his head again. The story made sense in a twisted, frightening way. If Lena was indeed his former lover and had become pregnant, his mother might have seen it as a threat to the family's reputation. An illegitimate child, especially one with a cleaning lady, did not fit into Helgerbrand's idea of the perfect family. But instead of addressing the situation directly, she had apparently decided to eliminate the problem by having Lena labeled mentally ill and admitted to a clinic, while the child disappeared into a home. The thought that his own mother could be capable of such cruelty made him shudder. Max interrupted his dark thoughts. I found something. An email from Werner to Stefan, about a week before Lena's admission. It says, package delivered, FB expects results. F? Lucas asked. Mrs. Brand, that must be my mother. Victor nodded grimly. Looks like we found our accomplices. The only question is whether we can get them to confess. I'll leave that to you, said Lucas. I want to go to the clinic as soon as Dr. Wagner is ready. Mind? Max, you stay here and keep digging. I'll take care of Werner and Stefan. An hour later, Lucas and Victor were sitting in Dr. Wagner's office at the State Criminal Police Office. The doctor, a serious middle-aged man with rimless glasses and graying hair, listened attentively as they described the situation. Forced hospitalization under a false name, he said after they had finished. That's highly illegal. The Lichtental Clinic would risk its reputation and its license if that came out. That's why we need your help, said Lucas. We need to find out if Lena Fisher is there, and if so, get her out. Dr. Wagner leaned back in his chair. I could arrange an official visit, an inspection of the facility, but if your mother is as influential as you say, you would probably be warned in advance, and all traces would be covered up. What do you suggest? Victor asked. A covert operation. I have the authority to inspect psychiatric facilities throughout the state. I could pay a surprise visit under the pretext of a routine inspection. You two could accompany me as assistants. Lucas nodded in agreement. When can we go? Right now, if you're ready. The night shift has fewer staff and less attention. As they set off, Lucas received a call from Max. We traced the bank transfer, the young man reported excitedly. It went to a Dr. Schneider at the Lichtental Clinic. He appears to be the attending physician of patient X, as she is referred to in the internal documents. Well done, Max. We're on our way there. Hold your position and let us know if you find anything else. The drive to the clinic was silent. Lucas stared out the window, his thoughts a whirlwind of worry and hope. What if Lena was really there? What if she was the same after all? And what if Emmy really was his daughter? The thought filled him with a strange mixture of fear and anticipation. The Lichtental Clinic was located on the outskirts of Munich, an imposing building from the early 20th century, surrounded by extensive, well-tended gardens. Despite its beautiful architecture, there was something oppressive about the place. Perhaps it was the barred windows or the high wall surrounding the grounds. Dr. Wagner parked his car in front of the main entrance and turned to his companions. Remember, you are my assistants. Let me do the talking. When we find Lena, don't give any sign of recognition. We must proceed with caution. They nodded in understanding and followed him to the entrance. A night nurse greeted them with a surprised look. Wagner, we weren't informed that you were coming. That's the point of an unannounced inspection, Nurse Mueller replied to Dr. Wagner in a friendly but firm voice. Please inform the doctor on duty. I would like to visit all the wards. The nurse looked nervous, but nodded and hurried away. Dr. Wagner turned to Lucas and Victor. Stay calm, we have to appear convincing. Shortly thereafter, a sleepy doctor in a white coat appeared. Dr. Wagner, what a surprise. I'm Dr. Peters, the night doctor. How can I help you? Routine inspection, Dr. Peters. We've had some complaints about the conditions here. Nothing serious, but I have to look into it. Dr. Peters seemed concerned, but he showed them around the clinic. They visited one ward after another. Dr. Wagner took notes and asked questions, while Lucas and Victor discreetly observed the patients, hoping to spot Lena. In the third ward, the one for special cases, as Dr. Peters called it, They were stopped by an elderly doctor with a stern face. "I am Dr. Schneider, the head physician of this ward. May I ask the reason for your visit?" At the name Schneider, Lucas and Victor exchanged a meaningful glance. This was the doctor from the emails. Dr. Wagner explained the purpose of their visit again, but Dr. Schneider seemed skeptical. "This ward houses patients with special needs. Visits disrupt their routine and can worsen their condition." "I understand your concerns, Dr. Schneider," Dr. Wagner said firmly. "But as a state inspector, I have the right to inspect all facilities. Or is there a specific reason why you don't want to let us in?" The two doctors stared at each other for a moment. Then Dr. Schneider reluctantly relented. "Of course not. Follow me." He led them through a locked door into a long corridor with single rooms. The doors had small windows through which one could see inside. Der Schneider routinely explained the various cases as they went from room to room. Lucas felt his heart beat faster as they approached the end of the corridor. The last door, slightly apart from the others, caught his attention. Unlike the others, it did not have a name on it, only a number. 23. "And this patient?" asked Dr. Wagner, who had noticed Lucas's interest. Dr. Schneider hesitated. "A special case. The patient suffers from severe warning delusions and is unable to receive visitors." "I would still like to see her," insisted de Wagner. "Unfortunately, that's not possible. She is under heavy sedation," Dr. Schneider interrupted Dr. Wagner in an icy voice. "If you deny me access to a patient, I must assume that something is wrong. I may be forced to write an official report, which would result in a full investigation." Dr. Schneider turned pale. "That won't be necessary. Follow me." He led her to the room 23 and opened the door. The room behind it was sparsely furnished. A bed, a chair, a small table. A woman lay on the bed, her hair a tangled mess of brown strands, her body thin and fragile-looking. Lucas had to summon all his self-control not to rush to her, because despite her altered state, he recognized her immediately. It was Lena, the woman in the photo, the woman he had known 8 years ago, the mother of Emmy, and possibly the mother of his daughter. Lena lay motionless on the narrow hospital bed, her breathing shallow and steady. Her skin was unnaturally pale, almost translucent, as if she hadn't seen sunlight in months. The amber eyes that had so fascinated Lucas were closed. Her long eyelashes cast delicate shadows on her sunken cheeks. "As you can see, the patient is sedated," said Dr. Schneider, with a gesture that seemed both apologetic and defensive. "She hardly responds to external stimuli, an unfortunate necessity given her condition." De Wagner stepped closer to the bed and picked up the medical file hanging at the foot of it. "Paranoid schizophrenia with severe disturbances," he read aloud. "Aggressive episodes. Continuous medication with Haldol and diazepam." He looked sharply at Dr. Schneider. "That's a very strong combination. Her condition requires it," Dr. Schneider defended himself. "She was extremely violent when she was admitted." "And when exactly was that?" Dr. Wagner asked, as he leafed through the file. "In March of last year. I don't see any admission, no referral papers, not even a full name." Dr. Wagner closed the file and held it up. "This documentation is highly inadequate, Dr. Schneider. It almost looks as if this patient isn't officially here." Dr. Schneider became visibly nervous. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for the file. "This must be a mistake. The documents must have been filed incorrectly." "Or they don't exist at all," said Dr. Wagner in a cutting tone. "I'm afraid I must have this patient transferred to another facility immediately where her treatment can be properly documented." "That's impossible," protested Der Schneider. "She is not transportable. And besides, I have strict instructions that she—" He fell silent abruptly when he realized what he had almost said. "Instructions?" Victor, who had been watching silently until now, pressed him. "From whom?" Der Schneider's gaze darted nervously between the three men. "From her relatives, of course. They want absolute discretion." "Interesting," said Dr. Wagner, "especially since according to this file, the patient has no relatives. At least none that are noted here." Lucas could no longer hold back. He stepped forward and confronted Der Schneider directly. "No relatives, except perhaps a 7-year-old girl named Amelia, the daughter they left behind when they brought her mother here." Dr. Schneider turned pale. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I think you know very well," said Lucas, his voice trembling with suppressed anger. Just as you know who gave the orders for this illegal internment. It was Helga Brand, wasn't it? At the mention of the name, Dr. Schneider recoiled, his face a mask of fear. I can't discuss this. I'm sorry, but you must leave now. We won't, said Dr. Wagner calmly. In fact, I will inform the public prosecutor's office immediately. Detention without legal basis, abuse of medication, forgery of documents. The list of charges will be long. Dr. Schneider, you don't understand, whispered Dr. Schneider desperately. Ms. Brand is a powerful woman. She has influence. She can't do anything, Lucas interrupted sharply. Not anymore. Not if this becomes public. Dr. Schneider sank into the chair next to the bed, his face buried in his hands. It was never my intention to harm anyone, he muttered. She came to me with a convincing story, a mentally ill woman who was a danger to herself and others. The paperwork seemed in order, and the financial support for our new research department. You let yourself be bribed, Victor stated. Dr. Schneider didn't answer, but his silence was answer enough. We need her full statement, Dr. Wagner said. But first, this woman needs to be taken to a proper hospital immediately. She needs medical help to come off the drugs. I'll call an ambulance, Victor said, pulling out his cell phone. While they waited for the ambulance, Lucas knelt beside Lena's bed. He gently took her hand in his. It was cold and limp, unresponsive to his touch. He searched her face for the lively, warm-hearted woman he had once known and found only a shadow. I'm so sorry, Lena, he whispered. I should have known about else. I should have looked for you when you disappeared. A soft moan escaped her throat, and her eyelids fluttered, opening for a moment. Her amber eyes, once so lively, were now glassy and unfocused. She looked at him, but it was clear she didn't recognize him. How long will it take for her to recover? He asked Dr. Wagner, who was studying the medications in her medical file. That's hard to say. She was heavily sedated for an extended period of time. The physical detoxification will take weeks, the psychological rehabilitation possibly months, but with the right treatment, there is hope for a full recovery. The ambulance arrived sooner than expected. The paramedics, who had obviously been warned in advance by Dr. Wagner, asked no questions as they placed Lena on a stretcher and carefully carried her out of the room. I'll accompany you, said Dr. Wagner. She is expected at the University Hospital in Munich. Dr. Neumann, a specialist in drug withdrawal, will take care of her personally. I'm coming with you, Lucas said immediately. Dr. Wagner shook his head. That wouldn't be helpful right now. She is not conscious and will not be for the next few days. Besides, you still have something to do here. He nodded in the direction of Dr. Schneider, who was slumped in his chair. Lucas knew he was right. All right, but keep me informed. Every change, every development. I want to be informed immediately. Of course, promised Dr. Wagner. And now take care of the legal aspects. This story is far from over. After Dr. Wagner and the paramedics had left with Lena, Lucas and Victor turned their attention back to Dr. Schneider, who was still sitting in the chair. A picture of misery. You have two options, doctor, said Victor in his best police tone. Either you cooperate fully with us in the public prosecutor's office, or you will be the main suspect in one of the biggest scandals in German medical history. Dr. Schneider raised his head, his eyes reddened. What do you want to know? Lucas said everything from the beginning. And so Dr. Schneider began to tell how Helga Brand had come to him 18 months ago with a convincing story about a cleaning lady who was harassing her son, who claimed to have had a relationship with him and was expecting his child, how she had presented forged psychiatric reports portraying Lena as a paranoid schizophrenic, how she had offered generous donations to the clinic if he ensured that Lena was safely accommodated and treated. And you didn't even consider that the story might be fabricated? Lucas asked incredulously. I had my doubts, Dr. Schneider admitted, especially after I examined the patient. She didn't show any typical symptoms of schizophrenia, but Mrs. Brand insisted that she was dangerous, that she had caused a scene in the Brandtech building, that she had even threatened to blackmail her son. None of that was true, Lucas said bitterly. Lena suddenly disappeared from my life without explanation. Now I know why. There was also a man named Werner who brought the chocolates, Dr. Schneider continued. He was the one who monitored the woman's condition after she ate the drug chocolates. He brought her here and said it was a private matter for the Brand family. Lucas and Victor exchanged glances. Werner, Victor repeated. The same Werner who was with her mother at Brandtech today. Lucas nodded grimly. That explains why he was so nervous when Emmy found the photo. He recognized Lena and knew that the truth could come out. Dr. Schneider looked back and forth between them. What will happen now? They will make a full written statement, Victor said. Every detail, every conversation with Helger Brand, every transfer, and they will testify as witnesses for the prosecution when the time comes. And what about me? Will I go to prison? That's up to the prosecutor, Victor said. But your cooperation will certainly be taken into account. They spent the next 2 hours recording Dr. Schneider's statement and securing evidence from the clinic. Medication logs, forged admission papers, transfer receipts. By the time they were done, it was almost midnight. I have to call Clara, Lucas said as they returned to the car. She and Emmy need to know we found Lena. Do that, said Victor. I'll drive you to them. They'll need you, especially Emmy. Lucas dialed Clara's number. She answered immediately, as if she had been waiting next to the phone. Lucas, did you find anything? Yes, he said, his voice raw with emotion. We found her, Kara. Lena is alive. He heard Kara inhale sharply. Oh, thank God. How is she? Where is she? She's on her way to the university hospital. She's been heavily sedated. It will take time for her to be herself again, but the doctors say there's hope for a full recovery. That's wonderful, Lucas. Emmy will be overjoyed. She just fell asleep, but I'll tell her tomorrow morning. No, Lucas said firmly. Wake her up. She has a right to know right away. Besides, I'm coming over. There's more I need to tell you. He hung up and looked at Victor, who was watching him thoughtfully. You really believe Emmy is your daughter, don't you? The detective asked quietly. Lucas nodded. Everything points to it. The time frame fits, and her eyes. He smiled wistfully. She has Lena's eyes and my stubbornness. This will change your life, Lucas. It already has. The drive to Clara's apartment was silent, each lost in their own thoughts. Lucas tried to imagine what his life would be like from now on, with a daughter he had only just met, with Lena facing a long recovery, with his mother who had turned out to be a criminal. It was overwhelming, and yet beneath all the fear and uncertainty, he felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. When they stopped in front of Clara's building, he turned to Victor. Thanks for everything. Victor smiled and patted his shoulder. You're welcome. Now go upstairs. Your family is waiting for you. Family. The word lingered in Lucas's mind as he climbed the stairs to Clara's apartment. Was that what awaited him? A family? After all these years of loneliness, failed relationships, and the loss of his son, was this the fate that awaited him? Clara opened the door before he could knock. Her face was marked by both concern and relief. Come in, she said quietly. Amy is in the kitchen. I told her you had good news. He followed her into the small, cozy apartment. Emmy was sitting at the kitchen table, her hair still damp from the shower, dressed in one of Clara's t-shirts that reached down to her knees like a nightgown. Her eyes were wide and hopeful when she saw Lucas. Did you find my mom? She asked without hesitation. Lucas knelt down in front of her to be at eye level and, Yes, Emmy, we found your mom. Her face lit up, brighter than the sun. Where is she? Can I see her? Is she here? She's in the hospital, Lucas explained gently. The bad people who took her away gave her medicine that made her very tired. She has to stay in the hospital for a while so the doctors can help her get well again. Amy's smile faded a little. But she'll get well again, won't she? The doctors say she has a good chance of making a full recovery. It will take time, but she is strong, just like you. Emmy jumped off the chair and threw herself into Lucas's arms. Thank you, she sobbed. Thank you for finding my mommy. Lucas held her tight, feeling her little body tremble in his arms, and vowed in that moment that he would never let her go again. No matter what the DNA test revealed, no matter what his mother said or did, this child would never be alone again. Over Emmy's head, he looked at Kara, who was watching them with tears in her eyes. Thank you, he mouthed, and she nodded in understanding. When Emmy had calmed down, he sat down with her and Clara at the kitchen table. It was time for the whole truth. Amy, he began cautiously, I have something else to tell you. Something about your mom and me. The girl looked at him curiously. What? I knew your mom a long time ago. We were friends. Really? Amy asked in surprise. Why did she never tell me about you? Lucas swallowed. Hard. It's complicated, but there's something else, something even more important. He took a deep breath. Emmy, I think I might be your father. Amy's eyes widened in disbelief. She didn't say anything for a long moment. She just stared at Lucas as if trying to find the truth in his face. My father, she whispered finally. But Mom said my father was far away, that he couldn't be with us. Lucas nodded slowly. And that was probably the truth, as your mother knew it. I think she was prevented from telling me about you by the evil woman, your mother. The child's directness hit him like a blow. Yes, by my mother. She did things that weren't right. Bad things. Clara put a hand on Lucas's arm, a silent gesture of support. Emmy, this is a lot to process. If you have any questions or need time. But Emmy seemed to accept the situation with the amazing adaptability of a child. Does that mean I don't have to live on the street anymore, and Mom and I can live with you? The simplicity of the question made Lucas smile despite the gravity of the situation. When your mom is healthy again, and if you both want to, then yes, of course. And if you really are my father, then the mean woman is my grandmother, right? Lucas's smile faded. Technically, yes, but Emmy, my mother hurt you both very much. She will have to be held accountable for what she did. Will she go to prison? Probably yes. Emmy thought for a moment, her little face serious. Well, she was mean to Mom. You're a very brave and smart young lady, Emmy, Clara said gently. The girl shrugged. When you live on the streets, you have to be strong. Then she turned back to Lucas, her eyes suddenly uncertain. When will we know for sure if you really are my father? Very soon, Lucas promised. We'll do a test that will show us, but Emmy, I want you to know something. He took her small hands in his. No matter what the test says, I will be there for you and your mother, I promise. Em looked at him thoughtfully, then nodded. Okay, but I think you are my father. You have the same crease between your eyebrows as I do when you think. Clara laughed softly and Lucas had to smile too. The child's powers of observation were astonishing. It's late, Clara said when she saw Emmy suppressing a yawn. You should go back to bed, Emmy. Tomorrow is another day. But I want to know more about my mom, Emmy protested weakly, but her eyelids were already heavy. Tomorrow, Lucas promised. Tomorrow, I'll tell you everything you want to know, and as soon as the doctors allow it, we'll visit your mom in the hospital. This prospect seemed to calm Emmy. She nodded wearily and let Kara put her to bed. Lucas stayed behind and returned alone to the kitchen, overwhelmed by the events of the day and the revelations of the night. When Kara returned, she sank exhausted into the chair opposite him. She fell asleep right away. The day was too much for her. For all of us, Lucas said quietly. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts. What are you going to do now? Clara finally asked. With your mother, I mean. Lucas sighed heavily. The right thing, I'm going to go to the police with all the evidence we have. She'll have to answer for what she did to Lena and Emmy. It's going to cause a huge scandal. Brandtech will survive, maybe not in its current form, but the company is solid, and honestly, I don't care right now. There are more important things than business success. Kara smiled gently. You've changed since this morning. Life has changed. Everything has changed. He leaned back and rubbed his tired eyes. You know, this morning I thought my biggest problem was getting to that damn meeting on time. And now I'm sitting here having just found out that my mother is a criminal, that I probably have a daughter I didn't know about, and that the woman I once knew was wrongfully confined to a psychiatric hospital for years. Life has a strange way of surprising us, Clara said thoughtfully. Sometimes in terrible ways, sometimes in wonderful ways, and sometimes both at once. Lucas looked at her, grateful for her calm presence amid the chaos. Thank you, Kara, for everything you have done today. For Emmy, for me. You could have just stayed out of it, but you didn't look away. I couldn't. Not when I looked into that child's eyes. She smiled slightly. And after everything we've been through together, I think you could call me by my first name? Gladly, Kara. He returned her smile, feeling an unexpected connection to this woman who, until recently, had been a stranger. His cell phone vibrated and he glanced at it. A message from Victor. The DNA samples are in the lab. We'll have the results tomorrow morning. Are you nervous? Kara asked. Strangely enough, no. I feel confident. As if I already know the answer. She nodded understandingly. I think you're right. The resemblance is unmistakable if you look closely. Lucas suppressed a yawn. The exhaustion of the day caught up with him. You should stay, Clara said. It's late and you're exhausted. The sofa isn't particularly comfortable, but the sofa sounds heavenly. Lucas interrupted gratefully. The thought of driving home now, back to his empty apartment, was unbearable. Clara took bedding out of a closet and helped him make up the sofa. When they were done, they stood in front of each other for a moment, unsure what to do. Good night, Lucas, she finally said gently. Try to sleep. Tomorrow will be another long day. Good night, Kara, and thank you for everything. She smiled once more and then disappeared into her bedroom. Lucas lay down on the sofa, too tired to undress, too agitated to fall asleep right away. He stared at the ceiling and reviewed the events of the day. In less than 24 hours, his entire life had been turned upside down. He had found a daughter he didn't know he had. He had discovered that his mother was capable of unimaginable cruelty. He had rediscovered a woman he had once loved without really knowing it. And in the midst of all this chaos, he had met two people, Emmy and Clara, who gave him a glimpse into a kind of life he had never thought possible. A life that was not determined by profit margins and stock market listings, but by connections, courage, and compassion. With this thought, he finally drifted into a deep, dreamless sleep. Morning came with the smell of fresh coffee and the soft giggles of a child. Lucas slowly opened his eyes and took a moment to get his bearings. Clara's living room, the sofa, the events of the night. He sat up and rubbed his eyes. Em stood in the doorway to the kitchen, a broad grin on her face. Good morning, maybe Dad, she called cheerfully. Kara's making pancakes. Lucas had to smile at her uninhibited manner. Good morning, Emmy. Pancakes sound wonderful. He followed her into the small kitchen, where Clara stood at the stove, dressed in jeans and a simple t-shirt, her hair tied back in a loose bun. She looked younger than yesterday, less formal. Good morning, she greeted him with a smile. Coffee? Please, he said gratefully, accepting the cup she offered. And good morning to you both. They ate breakfast together, a strangely familiar scene, as if they had done this 100 times before. Em chattered happily about everything and nothing, enthusiastic about the small luxuries of normal life. Pancakes for breakfast, a hot shower, a soft bed. In the middle of a story about a cat she had fed on the street, Lucas's cell phone rang. It was Victor. The results are in, the detective said, without further ado, 99.9% positive. Emmy is definitely your daughter, Lucas. Although he had already suspected it, the confirmation hit him with full force. He closed his eyes briefly, overwhelmed by emotion. Thanks, Victor, he said, his voice thick with emotion. And what about the other one? Dr. Wagner called. Lena is stable. They've started weaning her off the medication. It will be a slow process, but she's in good hands. Good. And my mother? The police have been informed. They're going to Brandtech today with a search warrant. Schneider has made a full statement, and we've handed over all the evidence. I should be there, Lucas said. I'm still the CEO. Are you sure you want to do this? No, but it's the right thing to do. After he hung up, he looked at Clara and Emmy, who were looking at him expectantly. The test is positive, he said simply. Emmy, I am indeed your father. Emmy's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. She jumped up from her chair and threw herself into his arms with such force that he almost spilled his coffee. I knew it, she cheered. I just knew it. Lucas held her tight. His heart swelled with love for this little girl who had so suddenly entered his life. Looking over her head at Kara, he saw that she had tears in her eyes. Congratulations, she said softly. Thank you, he replied, close to tears himself, for everything. After a moment, Emmy let go of him and looked at him seriously. Does that mean I can call you Daddy now? The question caught him off guard, and for a moment he couldn't answer. Daddy, a word he never thought he'd hear, not after what happened to Max. Yes, he finally said, his voice rough with emotion. Yes, I'd really like that. Emmy beamed. Okay, Daddy. The word hung between them. In the air, new and yet somehow familiar. a promise for the future. The police are going to Brand Tech today, Lucas explained after a while, because of your grandmother. Amy's smile disappeared. Will she be angry? Probably, but she can't hurt you anymore, Emmy. I promise you that. Are you going too? Lucas nodded. I have to. It's my responsibility. Can I come with you? Amy asked unexpectedly. I want to see her get arrested. Lucas and Clara exchanged worried glances. I don't think that's a good idea, Emmy, Clara said gently. It could get uncomfortable. But I'm not afraid of her, Emmy insisted. And besides, I want to see her really punished for what she did to Mom. Lucas understood her desire for closure, for justice. He felt the same way himself. But the thought of bringing Emmy near his mother unsettled him. How about a compromise, Clara suggested. We could all go together, but Emmy and I will wait in the car while you go in. That way she'll be nearby, but not directly involved. Lucas thought about it. That could work, but you definitely stay in the car until it's all over. Emmy nodded eagerly, satisfied with this arrangement. An hour later, they were on their way to the Brandtech building. Lucas had picked up a change of clothes from his office and changed. He was now wearing his CEO suit again, but he felt different in it, less like a businessman and more like a father who wanted to protect his family. When they arrived at Promenade Platz, he parked some distance from the main entrance. Several police cars were already parked in front of the building, and a small crowd had gathered, including some journalists with cameras. Stay here, he said to Clara and Emmy. I'll be back as soon as possible. Be careful, said Clara, and something in her voice made him pause. I will, he promised, squeezing her hand briefly. With one last glance at Emmy, who nodded encouragingly, he got out of the car and walked toward the Brandtech building. Sir, the crowd parted before him, and he heard murmurs as people recognized who he was. The lobby was in chaos. Police officers were searching through documents. Employees stood in groups, whispering nervously. Martina rushed up to him, her face pale with excitement. Mr. Brand, thank God you're here. The police, they have a search warrant and they're looking for your mother. I know, Martina. Where is she? In her office with her lawyers. She refuses to talk to anyone but them. Lucas nodded grimly. Take me to her. On the way to his mother's office on the top floor, he ran into Victor, who was talking to one of the senior police officers. Lucas, the detective, greeted him. This is Inspector Bauer. He's leading the investigation. The commissioner, a rather imposing man with gray hair and alert eyes, shook Lucas's hand. Mr. Brand, your cooperation in this matter is greatly appreciated. I want the truth to come out, Commissioner. No matter what the consequences. An admirable attitude. We have already found evidence of serious offenses, bribery, document forgery, and, of course, the illegal detention of Ms. Fisher. We have also arrested Werner Schmidt and Stefan Hoffman. They have already begun to testify against each other and my mother. She refuses to cooperate, insisting that it's all a misunderstanding. The inspector looked at Lucas seriously. We're going to arrest you, Mr. Brand. The evidence is overwhelming. I understand, Lucas said quietly. May I speak to her first? The commissioner hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes, no more. Lucas took a deep breath and entered his mother's office. Helga Brand sat behind her massive desk, flanked by 2 men in expensive suits, her lawyers. She looked tired, but her chin was raised defiantly, her posture unbroken. Lucas, she said, her voice cool, you finally show up. Do you know what's going on here? These police officers are searching my company, confiscating my documents, on the basis of ridiculous accusations. They're not ridiculous, Mother, Lucas said calmly, and it's not your company anymore. It's mine, and I won't let you continue to sully its name. Helga's eyes narrowed. Now. You're behind this, aren't you? You told them those absurd stories about that street kid and her mother. Amy is not a street kid, Lucas said, his voice hard. She's my daughter, your granddaughter, and her mother, Lena, is the woman you had poisoned and locked up in a psychiatric clinic just because she didn't fit into your idea of the perfect Brand family. For a moment, uncertainty flickered across Helga's face. Then her features hardened again. Nonsense, the child is lying, and that woman was mentally ill. She developed delusions about a relationship with you. Stop lying, Lucas thundered, his patience at an end. We have all the evidence, Mother. Der Schneider confessed. Werner and Stefan confessed. The transfers, the forged documents, the poisoned chocolate, everything. Helger. He paled, and for a moment she actually saw her age. An old woman whose carefully constructed world was collapsing around her. You don't understand, she said finally, her voice suddenly softer. I did it for you, Lucas. For the company, this woman, this cleaning lady. She would have ruined everything, our reputation, our position in society. The IPO was imminent. What would the investors have said if it had come out that the CEO had an illegitimate child with the domestic staff? The coldness in her voice, the complete absence of remorse or compassion, shocked Lucas, even though he should have expected it. You almost killed an innocent woman, he said quietly. You robbed a child of her mother and condemned her to life on the streets, my child, your own granddaughter, and all you can think about is the IAP. It was about more than that, Helger defended himself. It was about the legacy your father and I built, about the brand name. That name means nothing to me anymore, Lucas said bitterly, not after what you've done. He turned to leave but paused at the door. The police are coming to arrest you now, Mother, and I will make sure you pay for every single one of your crimes. Not out of revenge, but because Emmy and Lena deserve justice. With these words, he left the office, a strange calm in his heart. When he stepped into the hallway, the detective was already waiting with two officers. She's ready, Lucas said simply and stepped aside. He didn't stay to watch the arrest. There was nothing more to say, nothing more to do. Instead, he walked back to the elevator, down to the lobby, and out of the building into the bright sunshine of a new day. Clara and Emmy were waiting in the car, just as promised. When they saw him, they both smiled, and Lucas felt the weight of the past lift from his shoulders. What lay ahead was not an end, but a beginning. A new life with new responsibilities, new challenges, and new hope. Is it over? Emmy asked as he got in. Lucas smiled and gently stroked her hair. Yes, Emmy. The bad part is over. Now the good part begins. With Mom. Yes, with your mom as soon as she's healthy enough. And with you and Kara? Lucas glanced at Kara, who blushed slightly. If Kara wants that, yes, I'd be happy to continue being a part of your lives, she said quietly. Emmy clapped her hands enthusiastically. Great. Can we go visit Mom now? Lucas nodded. Yes, we can. Dr. Wagner said she's not conscious yet, but visits could still help her. He started the engine and drove the car away from Promenadeplatz, leaving Brandtech and everything it represented behind. A new path lay ahead of him, uncertain but full of possibilities. As they drove through the streets of Munich, Emmy began to chatter happily. She talked about all the things she wanted to do with her mother when she was well again. Her unbridled hope was contagious, and Lucas found himself thinking about the future. A future that had been unthinkable until yesterday. A family. His family. After all the years of loneliness, of losing his apprenticeship, this was the unexpected gift that fate had in store for him. He glanced in the rearview mirror and saw Emmy looking out the window, her face full of anticipation. Then he looked at Clara, who gave him a gentle smile, and he knew that no matter what the future held, he would never be alone again. 6 months later, the morning sun streamed through the large windows of the living room, bathing the room in warm golden light. Lucas stood at the stove preparing breakfast. Pancakes with fresh berries, Emmy's favorite meal. Happy children's voices drifted in from the garden. Amy was playing with Max, who was visiting. It had taken weeks for Lucas's ex-wife Sophia to agree to bring Max to Germany. The scandal surrounding Helger Brand had dominated the international press, and Sophia had initially hesitated to expose her son to all the commotion. But in the end, she had given in, perhaps out of compassion, perhaps out of curiosity. Lucas didn't care, as long as he could see his son. The first encounter between Max and Emmy had initially been marked by mutual reserve. The 10-year-old boy had looked skeptically at his newly discovered half-sister, unsure how to deal with this unexpected turn of events. But Emmy's natural cheerfulness and openness had finally broken through his reserve, and now, on his third visit, they were inseparable. How many pancakes should I make for the kids? Asked Clara, who was standing next to him, stirring the batter. Lucas smiled at her. Over the past few months, she had become an indispensable part of their lives. What had begun as an unusual encounter had developed into a deep friendship and, more recently, into something that could potentially become even more. At the rate they're playing, at least 20, he replied with a laugh. Clara shook her head. I don't understand where Emmy puts all that food. She's still so thin. The doctors say it's normal after what she's been through. Her body needs time to recover. A shadow flitted across Clara's face. The memory of Emmy's time on the streets, of the hardships she had endured, was still painful. At least she's doing well now, she said quietly, and Lena is making progress too. Lucas nodded, grateful for the thought. Lena's recovery had been a slow, arduous process. The strong medication she had been given for months had left deep scars. At first, she had hardly spoken, had difficulty concentrating, and suffered from severe anxiety. But with each passing week, she grew stronger. The therapies, both physical and psychological, were having an effect, and Emmy's regular visits seemed to be medicine for her soul. Every time her daughter came into the room, Lena's face lit up, and for a moment all the shadows disappeared. 2 weeks ago, the doctors had finally approved her discharge from the clinic. Lena had moved in with them at the EM, a spacious house on the outskirts of town that Lucas had bought, far away from Brandtech and everything it represented. She had her own room on the ground floor overlooking the garden, where she could sit for hours reading or just watching the birds. The relationship between Lucas and Lena was complicated. There was their shared past, the unspoken questions, the trauma she had suffered. Sometimes when she looked at him, he could see the fear in her eyes, the memory of the Brand family and what they had done to her. But there were also moments of connection, fleeting moments when they laughed about Emmy or remembered the few good times they had shared so many years ago. Should I check on her? Clara asked as if she had read his mind. She hasn't shown up yet this morning. No, let her rest, Lucas said. Yesterday was a tough day for her. The hearing, he fell silent, the memory of the courtroom fresh in his mind. The trial against his mother had begun 3 months ago, and yesterday Lena had appeared as a witness for the first time. It had been a harrowing experience. With a trembling voice but astonishing clarity, Lena had described how she had received the poison praline, how the men had picked her up and taken her to the clinic, how the drugs had made her dazed and confused until she no longer knew who or where she was. Helga Brand had sat motionless throughout the testimony, her face a mask of ice, not even when Lena described how she had asked about Amy, how she had cried for her child day after day, week after week, did Helga show any emotion. It was as if she had lost all humanity. How long do you think she'll go to prison? Kara asked as she poured the first batter into the pan. Lucas shrugged. The prosecutor is talking about at least 10 years. False imprisonment, attempted murder, bribery, document forgery. The list is long. And what about Werner and Stefan? They made a deal. Lighter sentences in exchange for their full cooperation. They'll get a few years, but not as much as my mother. Clara nodded thoughtfully. In Brandtech, how are things going there? A smile flitted across Lucas's face. After the scandal, he had made drastic changes to the company. The name had been changed. Brandtech had become New Begin Technologies, a symbol of the fresh start they were striving for. The board had been completely revamped with a focus on ethics and social responsibility. And Lucas himself had stepped back from day-to-day operations to have more time for his newfound family. Amazingly well, he replied. The IPO is planned for next year, and investors are enthusiastic about our new direction. It seems as if the scandal actually helped us reinvent ourselves. That's wonderful, Lucas, Kara said warmly. You deserve it after everything that's happened. He shook his head. I don't deserve anything, but Emmy and Lena deserve a good life. And if my work helps make that possible, then it's worth it. The patio door opened and Emmy rushed in, followed by Max, both with rosy cheeks from playing in the fresh morning air. Dad, Max taught me how to play soccer, Emmy exclaimed excitedly. I even scored a goal. She's a natural, Max confirmed, his initial reluctance toward his half-sister obviously forgotten. Fast and skilled. That's great, you two, Lucas said, his heart swelling with joy at the sight of his children interacting so naturally with each other. Just in time for breakfast. Clara is making her famous pancakes. With bears? Amy asked hopefully. Of course with bears, Clara laughed. Your favorite places. The children washed their hands and sat down at the large dining table that formed the center of the open kitchen. Lucas began serving the finished pancakes while Kara poured fresh orange juice. "Should I wake Mom?" Emmy asked, staring eagerly at her plate. "I don't think that will be necessary," replied a soft voice from the doorway. Lena stood in the doorway, wrapped in a light dressing gown, her hair braided into a loose plait. She still looked fragile, too thin, with dark shadows under her eyes, but it was a marked improvement from the broken being they had found in the hospital. "Mom," Emmy cried, jumping up from her chair to hug her mother. "Clara is making pancakes with bean, and Max taught me how to play soccer." Lena smiled, a genuine warm smile that made her amber eyes sparkle. "That sounds wonderful, sweetheart." She gently stroked Emmy's hair and nodded to Max, who smiled shyly back. Then she turned to Lucas and Clara. "Good morning, you two. Can I help with anything?" "Everything's already prepared," Clara said. "Just sit down and enjoy breakfast." "Thank you." Lena sat down next to Emmy, her movements still cautious, as if she feared this reality could shatter at any moment. They began to eat. The children chattered excitedly about their soccer plans for the day. Lucas watched them all, his children Lena, Kara, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. Despite all the pain, all the tragedies, they had somehow found this moment of peace, this little island of normality. After breakfast, the children went back out into the garden while the adults cleared the table. "How are you feeling today?" Lucas asked Lena quietly as Kara went into the kitchen to do the dishes. Lena hesitated, then shrugged. "Better, I think. The hearing yesterday was hard, but it also felt liberating to finally tell the truth, to say it in front of everyone. You were very brave." A fleeting smile flitted across her face. "Not really, but I had to do it. For Emmy and for yourself," Lucas said gently. "You deserve justice, Lena." She looked at him. Her eyes searched his face for something he couldn't name. "Do you think we'll get it?" "Justice. The court will convict your mother," he said firmly. "I have no doubt about that. But will that be enough? Will it bring back the lost time, dispel the nightmares?" She shook her head. "Sometimes I think the only true justice is what we have now. Amy, safe and happy, you and me reunited, even if in a way I could never have imagined. Kara, who is so wonderful to all of us." "She is," she smiled weakly. "Maybe life itself is the best justice." Lucas was touched by her wisdom, her ability to find hope and reconciliation even after everything she had been through. "You're probably right," he said quietly. "I have to tell you something," Lena Ford said, her voice suddenly serious. "Something I should have said a long time ago." "What is it?" "I wanted to tell you about Emmy 8 years ago. I was on my way to your office when your mother intercepted me. She said you weren't interested in having a child, especially not with, how did she put it, an insignificant cleaning lady. She offered me money to go away, but I refused. I told her I would speak to you myself." Lucas felt his stomach clench. "What happened then?" "She threatened me, said she would make sure I lost my job, that I would never find work anywhere in Munich again, that she would destroy me if I dared to bother you with this ridiculous story." Lena swallowed hard. "I was afraid, Lucas. Not for myself, but for the unborn child. So I left, changed my name, and started a new life." "But you came back," Lucas said, confused, "as a cleaner at Brantech." Lena nodded. "After Hemi was born, money was tight. I needed work, and Brantech paid well. I thought I would never run into your mother on the night shift, and I hoped that maybe one day I would find the courage to tell you about Emmy." She smiled sadly, "But then on my birthday, those chocolates arrived." "I'm so sorry, Lena," Lucas said. His voice broke with guilt and remorse. "If I had known, you wouldn't have," she interrupted him gently. "Your mother was very thorough, and I was too cowardly to come to you when I had the chance." "You weren't cowardly," he protested. "You did what you had to do to protect Emmy." They were silent for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts. Through the window, they could see the children playing in the garden. Their laughter was a bright contrast to the serious conversation. "I want you to know," Lena finally said, "that I was never angry with you. Even in my darkest hours in the clinic, when I no longer knew who I was or why all this was happening, I never blamed you." "Maybe you should have," Lucas murmured. No, her voice was surprising. Firm. "Blame doesn't help anyone. What happened is done. We can't change it. but we can decide how we move forward from here. At that moment, the camera cut back to the kitchen. Her hands were still wet from washing the dishes. She immediately sensed the tense atmosphere. "Is everything okay?" she asked with concern. Lena smiled at her, a warm, honest smile. "Yes, everything is fine. We were just talking about the past and the future." Clara nodded understandingly. "The future looks bright, I think, especially for Emmy and for all of us," Lena added, with a look at Lucas that said so much that words couldn't express. Forgiveness, hope, maybe even the beginning of something new. The door flew open and Emmy rushed in, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "Mom, Dad, Kara, come quick. Max and I found a rainbow." They followed her into the garden, where indeed a magnificent rainbow arched across the sky, its colors glowing against the dark clouds that were slowly clearing. "It's beautiful," Lena whispered, her hand clasped tightly around Emmy's. "Do you know what a rainbow means?" Emmy asked, her eyes wide with wonder. "It means the storm is over and the sun is coming back." Lucas felt Kara slip her hand into his, a silent, comforting touch. On the other side stood Max, his face turned toward the sky, a rare smile on his lips. And there were Lena and Emmy, mother and daughter reunited after all the suffering. "Yes," he said softly, his voice full of emotion. "The storm is over." They stood there together, an unusual family, formed by pain and loss, but also by love and hope. And as they gazed at the rainbow stretching majestically across the Munich sky, Lucas knew that despite all the wounds that still needed to heal, they were on the right path. The question Emmy had asked him on that rainy day, "Do you also cry from hunger?" had proven prophetic. He had indeed been starving, not for food, but for connection, for family, for love. And through a series of unlikely events and tragic circumstances, he had it all. The rainbow slowly faded, but its promise remained. After every storm, no matter how fierce, the sun would shine again, and they would be ready to welcome it together. Dear listeners, we hope you were moved by the story of Lucas, Emmy, and Lena. For more emotional journeys, we have prepared a special playlist with similarly captivating stories. You can find it here by clicking on the link to your left. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Every day, we bring you unique stories that explore the complexity of life. Don't miss our upcoming content. We look forward to your comments.